Welcome, everybody, tonight. We are so glad you can join us this evening. My name is Barbara Umstutz, and I'm on the Board of Trustees of the Southwest Harbor Library. The Southwest Harbor Public Library is a small nonprofit library with a large impact in our community. Because of your support, thank you. You fund over 85% of the services here. Before I introduce our speaker tonight, Carolyn Gage, I wish to update you on our next program at the library. Please consider joining us in 2 weeks for a lively online and in-person event with Seth Singleton for his talk, America First Returns, Prospects for Democracy and Autocracy Around the World. The presentation is a community event leading up to the Camden Conference in February. In addition, I'd like to draw you to the beautiful quilts that are adorning the room. They are produced by the MDI Island quilters, and there are many representatives here tonight. Would you like to stand up and introduce yourselves?
Yes, yes.
You. Oh, sure.
So after the program, please take a moment to look at the works that are been displayed in the library. We are most thankful tonight to have a nationally accomplished playwright, Carolyn Gage, who everybody knows due to the wonderful turnout. She has been a community member in Southwest Harbor for the past 8 years. Her program introduction to the MDI Lesbian History Trail is our most watched library program on our YouTube channel. Carolyn is the author of 12 books and close to 90 plays, and we are excited to hear her newest play tonight. We will be recording this event, and Kate Pickup will help facilitate online questions during the talkback after the performance. Please use the Q&A feature, all online participants. You will be able to access tonight's program on the library's YouTube channel in a few days. Please warmly welcome Carolyn Gage.
Please turn off your cell phones right now. I haven't turned mine off. Read my memo. I'm Carolyn Gage, and welcome to the first public reading of my one-act play, Reef Point. The reading is going to last for about an hour, and then we'll take a break, a short break, and come back and talk with me and the actors. A first reading of a play is a really special time, and I'm really overwhelmed. I feel kind of tearful that you're all here. I feel this is where you want to read your play for the first time. And I'm nervous because I'm from away, and this play is about island history. So I just want to give you some disclaimers. First of all, it's a play. It's not a documentary. And playwrights take liberties, you know, like the rap musical Hamilton about the 18th century. But I did do a year and a half of research on this subject. I read all the biographies, all the bulletins from Reef Point. I watched the documentary, which is on Amazon Prime, Beatrix Farrand's American Landscapes, great film. Talked with Lyndon Miller, who made the documentary. I think she's on Manzit Road in the summer. I talked with Patrick Chassé, a landscape architect from the island, who is the reason that Garland Farm has been restored and is open to the public today. I browsed the archives at the Historical Society. I went to see the famous Dumbarton Gardens that Farrand designed in Washington, D.C., saw everything she designed on the island. And I read her entire will, which was not short, which is on file in Ellsworth Public Record. We should all be so lucky to have a will that comes out like. Anyway, big thanks to Debbie Dwyer from the Historical Society, who found a photograph of Clementine Walter, who was Beatrix Farrand's lady's maid. That was a complete treasure for me. And as soon as I saw the photograph, I threw out everything that I'd written. I started over because you can tell a lot about a person. Like, oh, that woman would never say any of the stuff I've written. You saw it. If you sat here through the slideshow, yes, there were things you could tell about Clementine from that picture. at the break and after the show, we're gonna show the slides again, and her photograph is there. I spent a whole lot of time researching, and I just want to say whatever problems there are in it are mine and mine alone, and I'm sure I'll hear about it, but nearly all of Farrand's dialogue in the play is taken from her writing. The story is told through the eyes of her lady's maid, Clementine, or as she called her, Clem, and Clem's friend, Maisie. Now, Maisie is another lady's maid, 2 houses down on the shore path. She's fictionalized, but her employer, Mrs. McLean, was real, and she wrote an autobiography called Father Struck It Rich. Her father hit a gold mine. And all of the McLean family stories in the play are real. I really couldn't make that shit up. They were all in McLean's book. Just wanted you to know I took this subject very seriously, and I did my best. I'm incredibly blessed to have such a wonderful cast. In order of appearance, Sherry Magnello is reading stage directions. You guys just don't know where it is. And she's, but I'm jealous. But and then Mary Heffernon plays a woman who's lived her whole life on Mount Desert Island. Just give a little wave to the audience so they know who you are. Cindy Robbins is Clementine Walter. Katie Migdal is Maisie Murphy. Chris Joseph is the town manager of Bar Harbor. And Phoebe Barnes is Beatrix Farrand. Big thanks to Phoebe, Phil Kell, and Wesley Sidden who helped me with script development. Thank you all for coming, and please, I'm serious, stay and talk with me about the show afterwards. And here we go.
Act 1, Scene 1. Welcome to our play tonight, Reef Point. I'm probably one of the few remaining people on the island old enough to still remember Reef Point. My mother took me there in 1951, and I know that because I had just seen the talking flowers in Disney's Alice in Wonderland. And 1951 was the year when the film was released. I would have been 3 years old. So our play tonight is about the Reef Point garden, but really it's a play about all our gardens. Funny thing about humans, put them in a garden and the next thing you know, they'll be getting themselves kicked out of it. Oldest story in the Bible, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. That's just a story, and yet here we are today on this great garden of a planet. And we've just been served a global eviction notice. What is it about a garden that we just can't seem to understand or respect? Or is it something about ourselves? So we have put together a little play tonight about Reef Point, and maybe there's some clues in the story. Hope so, because we're running out of time. Anyway, everyone knows that Reef Point was beautiful. Everything Beatrix Farrand designed was beautiful. But what not so many people know is that it was magical. Absolutely magical. There were woodland paths with unexpected delights around every corner. There was a magical rose garden where the flowers had magical names. My mother would read them to me. Names like Baroness Rothschild and Marie von Hoot. Just like Disney's flowers, they had personalities. And there were rock gardens, and there was a bog. Every fairy story needs a good bog. And heather right down to the ocean. And the Farrand cottage, to my eyes, it was a magic castle. It was all wooden, very dark wood with gables and balconies and terraces, and the whole thing smothered with climbing hydrangeas. And there was a spruce garden that looked like a gathering of little green wizards with pointed hats. And everywhere there were clever little benches and bird baths and giant mysterious pots. The further you got from the cottage, the harder it was to tell if you were still in the garden or if you were in the woods, because the gardens had beautiful trees, fir and spruce, and the woods had flowers, Maine bunchberries and bearberries. It was as if all of the landscaping was specifically intended to draw your attention to the enchantment of the natural world. If you want to really see a garden, take a 3-year-old who knows her fairy tales. Reef Point was complete and total magic.
Blackout, end of scene. Act 1, scene 2. Lights come up on a bench on the shore path, Bar Harbor, Maine, in front of Reef Point, the 6-acre summer estate of the famous landscape designer Beatrix Farrand. It is an early evening in May 1955. Clem Walter, 74, sits on the bench. She is Mrs. Farrand's longtime lady's maid, and she has just received some shocking news. Suddenly, Maisie Murphy, 65, enters running. A lady's maid. She is wearing a uniform.
Is that you, Clem?
Maisie.
Oh, Clem, I'm so happy to see you here. I was wondering if I was going to see you this summer. I have some big news to tell you.
Why wouldn't I be here?
Well, it seems that every spring, fewer and fewer of the old families are coming back to Bar Harbor. Ever since the fire of 47, they've been selling up and moving. Even now, even 8 years later, still selling up, still moving out. Oh, the cottages up on Millionaires Row, they're mostly motels now. And even down here on the shore path, where the fire didn't even reach, folks are just yanking up stakes and leaving Maine, going back to Rhode Island, back to Newport. I guess they don't want to be left behind. But you're here, back on the island in time for summer. Oh, Mrs. Farrand must be one of the ones who made up their minds to stay. Oh, look at that view. Just look at it, Clem. The ocean and the islands. Oh, Mount Desert Island is the very heaven. And you, look at you sitting on this bench at the very gate of the very heaven. Reef Point. So how are you, Clem? You all right? Clem.
What? Just tired, Maisie. Sick too.
No, don't be too tired, because I have something to tell you. Something you're not going to believe, and you won't tell anyone. Well, Clem?
Sorry. Pardon. So, Miss Maisie Murphy has a secret.
Clem? You sick?
No.
You don't see yourself. So when did you and Mrs. Farrand get to the island?
This afternoon, we came up on the train from Boston.
That explains it. Unpacking.
Wait, unpacking.
Well, that is the life of a lady's maid, isn't it? We pack and unpack. Then we pack again and unpack again. Well, that's what I'll be doing tomorrow.
Oh, the McLeans aren't here yet.
Oh, no. The family sent me up ahead to open the house. Last week I rode up with the chauffeur, the housekeeper, and the chef. It was just the 4 of us, and we had the whole estate of Briar Cliffs to ourselves, bowling alley and all. It had been the very heaven. Nobody bring me this, bring me that. Nobody blaming, nobody complaining. Do you know what I did yesterday? I took the whole day off to go to Baker Island. Just me by myself, not on an errand, not picking up anything, not for anybody, not watching anyone's children. I just walked down to the pier. I hired a boat to take me, and off I went. Have you ever been to Baker Island?
No.
Oh, you should go. It's amazing. There's a lighthouse. And then on the other side of the island, there are these giant granite rocks that overlap each other like giant pancakes all the way down to the shore. They call it the dance floor. Because the young people row over from Cranberry Island and dance on the rocks. The dance floor, right out in the middle of the ocean. And do you know what I did? I danced on it. Oh, yes, I did. All by myself, 65 years old, and I danced on the rocks. You should go.
She produces a bottle of whiskey and a glass.
When the cat's away, the mice will play. In just 20 hours, they'll all be here. John Jr. and the new wife. That's a piece of work, I tell you. And the children and grandchildren. And of course, the friends and the friends' children and the children's friends. The whole bleeding circus will be here. To my last night of freedom.
Oh, no, no. But you said you had some big secret.
Oh, no, Clem. First, we're going to drink to you getting Mrs. Farrand's trunks unpacked before midnight. Come on. Say to you, what's wrong, Clem? You know you can tell me.
She's tearing it down.
Who's tearing what down?
Reef Point. Mrs. Farrand is tearing down Reef Point. She's dismantling the house and selling the land.
This Reef Point. This Reef Point over here. Well, that's ridiculous. Where did you hear that?
She told me just now, after I finished unpacking.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. The woman's 80.
83.
Well, here you are, 83, and away with the fairies. And where's she going to go? Reef Point has been her summer home since she was a little girl. Everyone knows she hasn't got any family left.
Well, Amy and Lou Garland are retiring this year. His family's farm is at the head of the island, and they're going to move there. Mrs. Farrand has told me she's going to move in with them.
What? She's going to go live with her handyman and her head gardener? She's going to move in with her servants. And how's that going to work out? Please tell me that. She's going to order them about in their own house? Is she going to be some kind of permanent house guest? Then what about you? Are you going with her?
What choice do I have?
What choice do you have? You can quit.
Maybe. I'm 74.
So I'm 65 and I'm yes, I'm leaving service. And high time I did too. Half a century.
Have you told them at length?
No, not yet. But I'll be leaving at the end of summer.
What-
Maisie, what will you do?
See. What will you do?
Well, I'm going into the business for myself. No. We are talking about you. Now you need to say something
What?
to Mrs. Farrand. You need to tell her that makes no sense. At 83, to be tearing down a perfectly good house and then selling off the Garden of Eden. You tell her it makes no sense.
I can't.
Oh, yes, you can. You should hear the things I used to say to Mrs. McLean and the things she said to me. God rest her soul.
Mrs. Farrand is different.
Well, and don't I know that? Doesn't everyone on the island know that? Mrs. Farrand scares the living daylights out of people. Don't be looking at me like that. You know yourself she does. The woman could afford to wear anything she wants. What does she wear? Suits. Gray and black suits. Like an undertaker. Mrs. McLean used to say that whenever Mrs. Farrand walked into the room, it's like she caught the guest stealing the silver. Now, Clem, you listen to me. The woman's husband is dead. There's no children, no siblings. They've all moved away. Who's going to tell her she's making a mistake, It's up to you, Clem. Yes, it is. Look, who knows these great ladies better than the ladies' maid? Who lays out their clothes every morning? Who draws their bats? Styles their hair? Who keeps them track of their appointments. And these women, they wouldn't know if they were coming or going now would they? Nobody knows them better than the ladies' maid. And when they run off track, who's going to tell them if it isn't us? Clem, do you remember how Mrs. McLean got her husband to buy her that hideous diamond, that necklace, the Hope diamond? Which, by the way, I thought was the uglier than a homemade child. A chunk of cheap glass. I wouldn't wear it to my own funeral. Well, anyways, Mrs. McLean would used to brag about how she didn't believe in the curse of the Hope diamond and how it was a good luck charm for her. The way she said it, like she was spitting the eye of God right in his eye. So one day I just turned to her and I said, with all due respect, your son was not even 9 when he got himself run over in the street.
No.
Your husband drank like a fish, ran with another woman, and died in a mental asylum. They bankrupted the Washington Post. Your grown daughter went to meet her maker with a belly full of sleeping pills.
You said that to her. What happened?
Well, she got very quiet. And you know, Mrs. McLean was not a quiet woman. She got very quiet and then she said, well, Murph, you're not wrong. And I never heard her call that goddamn necklace a good luck charm again. Oh, my point is this, Clem. There's very few people in this position to tell these grand ladies the truth. And rich or poor, we're just humans. We all need to hear the truth.
I did try to say something, but she took it the wrong way.
Well, what happened?
Well, it was Christmas Eve.
Well, what's Christmas Eve? This one?
This one, 5 months ago, and we were at her winter cottage in California, and I knew something was wrong. She wasn't herself.
What do you mean? Drinking? Pills?
Oh, nothing like that. Mrs. Farrand is, comment se dit? In France, we say she is the maître de soi, master of herself.
Self-possessed?
Oh, oui, c'est ça. Self-possessed. But I could tell. And I asked her what was wrong.
And?
She told me the tax laws had changed and she was going to have to end the foundation. The one that funds. She has to shut it down because she lives on the property.
Well, couldn't she move?
She said she would still have to shut it down and it couldn't start up again until a year after her death. And even then, there was no guarantee that it would be improved.
But the change, it's just all on paper, isn't it?
No, it means she is going to have to pay taxes on the land.
Wait. Are you telling me Mrs. Farrand is going to have to tear down Reef Point because she has to pay taxes? Unbelievable.
No, you don't understand.
Oh, no, Clem. You are the one who doesn't understand. Mrs. Farrand is a rich lady having a tantrum. I'm sorry, but it's the truth.
I cannot talk to you about this.
What? You pay taxes, I pay taxes. Why not a millionaire? How am I wrong? Tell me, how am I wrong?
You don't know her. You don't know Mrs. Farrand. You don't live with her.
Maybe you don't know her because you do live with her.
She's not like your Mrs. McLean. She works, and her mother worked. She didn't inherit some gold mine in Colorado. She doesn't go around buying Hope diamonds. You don't know what you're talking about.
Then tell me.
Mrs. Farrand is an artist and a genius. And she has had to fight very, very hard to be respected. Her father abandoned the family when she was still a child, and her mother had to work. And then she had to teach herself about landscaping because all the designers were men. No school where she could study, there was no company where she could get trained. She had to find her own way. And if she intimidates people, that's a good thing because she has to supervise men. Gardeners, builders, engineers, men who never took an order from a woman in their life. And she wears gray and black suits because those are the colors the men wear. What do you think she should wear? A bright yellow suit? Or maybe a pink one? Or one with little flowers or a lacy collar, a big floppy bow. And I will tell you something about the gray and black suits. She had the sleeves tailored an extra 2 inches so that when she raises her arm, the sleeve doesn't slide up and show her wrist. Why? Why would she do that? Because she had to. Because the men couldn't look where she was pointing because they were too busy staring at the bare skin on her wrist. But you can't because you worked for a woman who wore the biggest diamond in the world on her chest just to make sure everyone would stare at her bosom. Oh, Macy.
Well, you're not wrong. Mrs. McLean would be the first to admit it. She had a lot of regrets.
I'm sorry.
Maisie empties the bottle.
You know, started, she was an addict to morphine.
Didn't know that.
Oh, I never told anyone. It was around the time her husband bought Briarcliff, 1910. And she was a new mother, too. Oh, yes. And she would send me around to the druggists to buy it. And as long as she had the money, they would sell. She would cut little slits in the bottom of the furniture to hide the packets, under the rugs, everywhere. Her habit got so bad, she couldn't sleep. She would wake me up and make me walk with her, sometimes all night. If we were on a ship, we would walk around and around the deck until sun came up. And she would see things under the bed, giant lizards and great snakes. You know, she envied Mrs. Farrand. She did. Oh, she made fun of her, oh yes. But she envied her. Because Mrs. Farrand had discipline and people respect her.
You loved your Mrs. McLean very much.
Yes, I did, and she loved me. And I was by her side for all of it. The addiction, the death, the political scandals, her daughter's suicide. We were close in age, and you could say we grew up together. But you know, Clem, I feel like an old dog now. An old dog whose owner has died. Her son's taken me on, but his new wife had her own maid, and I can't keep up with those new hairstyles and the fashions. There's no place for me.
I'm so sorry.
Well, I'm quitting. But you have to say something to your Mrs. Farrand. She's overreacting and you need to tell her.
I did say something.
Well, what? What did you say?
I said you must fit the plan to the ground.
What?
You must fit the plan to the ground. That's what Mrs. Farrand would tell her clients when they wanted a garden they had seen in a magazine or something. They would have this beautiful land here in Maine, the cliffs and the fir trees, and they would want her to dig up the big rocks, cut down the trees, and then bulldoze it all flat down to the water and plant grass. Mrs. Farrand would tell them, fit the plan to the ground and don't twist the ground around to fit the plan. I was trying to say to Mrs. Farrand that the ground had changed. The war, the fire, the taxes, her husband dead, her being so old. The ground has changed. And her big dream of Reef Point, this famous landscape institute with a library and a garden that takes half a dozen gardeners, it was time to let that go. I never meant to tear everything up and sell it. She didn't understand.
Oh, she understood. She just had other ideas. If Mrs. Farrand couldn't have Reef Point exactly the way she wanted it, then she didn't want it at all.
Mrs. Farrand is a proud woman.
Well, you know what they say. When the peacock struts, half the world sees his backside.
She doesn't know how to ask for help.
Asking for help. Mrs. McLean would ask for help all the time. Murphy, help me, help, need help. From the top floor of the house, screaming like a banshee. Help me, Murphy. And me, dropping what I was doing, running up all damn stairs. And you know what it was?
The monkey.
The monkey, the goddamn little monkey. Oh, she used to shut it up in the bathroom all night. And in the morning, the floor would be inches deep, inches in broken glass, pink bath salt, face powder, gold cream. Oh, reeking of perfume.
Oh, if Mrs. Farrand had only asked me.
Monkey. Oh, and there was a llama too, inside the house. And you know what that llama used to do?
He spit.
Right up. Look right up at you, square in the eyes, he would, and then flop right in your face. And you could always tell when he was getting ready. Because he did this little back dance with his neck, and then and there was a parrot who cursed like a stevedore, and puppies, oh, chased with litters and litters of puppies, oh, and horses, oh, not the normal ones, no, horses. And she bought herself Tom Thumb's carriage, even. I don't know why God gives money to rich people. I don't. No idea what to do with it.
It was her dream. She was losing her dream. I didn't know what to say.
Would say at least you had a dream. What did the lady's maid have at the end of a lifetime of service? A room. House, not an apartment. We have a single room. And that isn't even ours. We have a closet full of uniforms and a dress or two for our one day off. Oh, children of our own. Oh, God knows we have to take care of everyone else's. That goddamn monkey had more freedom than we do. And what are our dreams? What is the wildest and biggest dream of a lady's maid? Well, I'll tell you. It's to die for a Mrs. Do. And that is pathetic. It's fucking pathetic, I tell you. Excuse my language.
But Macy, we've had a chance to travel.
Oh, I'm going to buy myself that. Yes, Clem, I am. I'm going to take money that Mrs. McLean left me, and I'm going to lease me one of those storefronts in town, and then I'm going to get a bank loan and buy myself a dozen laundry machines. Yes, but I am. A nice little laundromat in Bar Harbor. And then I'm going to go around to all the big estates and they're going to contract with me to wash their linen, pickup and delivery. Because I'm cheaper than a linen maid. Like the way they talk to me. I won't do the laundry. And at the end of every day, I'll just stroll through my laundromat, empty out the coin boxes like picking cherries in an orchard. Yes, I'm 65, Clem, and the only family I have isn't my family. And I'm going to buy myself a little dog and name her Lola. I never want to put on another uniform in my life. I want to sleep late and take any day off that I want. And that is my dream. What's yours?
Stay here. To stay here at Reef Point.
Listen to me, Clem. Tomorrow morning, you get up and you tell her it's time for her to put her pride in her pocket like the rest of us mortals and ask for help. For the sake of Reef Point, you tell her to march herself down to town hall and explain to them how she's been providing a free garden for the people of Bar Harbor for over 15 years. How she designed the village green and Agamon Park and landscape all of Mr. Rockefeller's stone bridges over those carriage roads of his. And how she did most of it without asking a dime. And now it's time for them to do something for her. She needs the town to give her a break on the taxes. Now, I've got to go. And Clem, take your own advice. Put the plan to the ground.
Blackout, end of Act 1. Act 2, Scene 1. Lights come up on the town manager of Bar Harbor.
Look, I am not the bad guy here. She came into the townhouse to explain she had gotten a letter from the IRS about the Johnson Act, and she was losing the tax break on Reef Point. Okay. That's okay. Nothing to do with Bar Harbor. Federal. Act of Congress. Nothing to do with the state. Nothing to do with the town. Federal. Death and taxes. Nothing I can do. But she wants to come in and talk about property taxes, not income taxes, because the town does the assessment. Now look, Mrs. Farrand has 6 acres on the shore path. Oceanfront. Prime real estate. And she hasn't paid any taxes for 15 years, not since she set up the Reef Point Gardens Foundation. Okay. That's fair. That's the law. But now, because she's dissolving the Johnson Act, she's dissolving that foundation, I don't have any control over that. She seems to think that I can let her off from paying taxes because we know her, because the garden's been available to the public for years. That's not how it works. We can't go against federal law. We can't decide not to tax her because she's a nice lady and her family's been here forever. That's not how it works. And I did feel sorry for her because she's 83, because she doesn't have any family, or it's like Bar Harbor is her family. And she thought after she died, the foundation would go over and continue for the sake of the public. But honestly, she's an old lady who lives on a great piece of property 6 acres. And she's gotten her rich friends to donate for the upkeep of her yard. Because that's what we're talking about. Her yard. Wouldn't I like to do that? Have my buddies hire someone, mow the lawn, cut the hedges. In exchange, they can walk around my yard anytime. And presto, no property taxes. Doesn't work like that. And here's the thing. Here's the real elephant in the room. The fire. 7 years ago, we still haven't dug out all those problems. I mean, the infrastructure. We lost 70 of those big estates. That's half the wealthiest people in the community. We had to double the taxes on everyone. Rich, poor, everyone. Everyone. Except for Mrs. Farrand. She had that foundation. Like I said, that's right. That's fair. But she was lucky. She was damn lucky. That fire came through Bar Harbor like a tornado. I mean, it just burned through the town in minutes. The big houses, the houses up on Millionaire Road, the hotels, burned everything to the ground. Except the shore path. We were all huddled down by the pier. Boats were coming to evacuate. We were down there with just the clothes on our backs. I was thinking, like everyone else was thinking, that pretty soon we'd be in the water up to our necks, ducking down just to survive. Boats coming up and down, motorboats, fishing boats. And then the wind shifted. Missed all those houses on the shore path. What the hell? She wasn't there anyway. None of those people were there. By October, they're all gone to their winter homes. Well, it's too bad she had to dissolve the foundation. It's too bad she's 83. It's too bad our friends have all moved away. Yeah, it's too bad. But she got some great breaks. She got some pretty good breaks. Sometimes you hunt the bear. Sometimes the bear hunts you. I'll tell you something else. Town's different since the fire. More people moving in all the time. Different industry, tourists. Summer people are tourists now, not millionaires. They come for a week, they come for 2 weeks. It's a whole different ballgame. And we've got new people running the town, not millionaires. 6 acres on the shore path. Yeah. She's going to pay taxes. And it's not going to be cheap. And that's how it works.
Like that.
Act 2, Scene 2. Lights come up on the bench. It's an evening a week later and a storm is moving in. Clem, in uniform, is pacing back and forth, uncharacteristically agitated. Maisie, clutching a jacket around her, enters running.
What is it? About your message. He told me it was urgent.
You are right.
What?
You are right. What you said, you are absolutely right.
Clem, there's a storm moving in. Let's go inside.
No, I don't want to see her.
Oh, who do you not want to see, Clem? What is it? What's the emergency?
I have to have a better dream.
Calm down. Calm down. What are you talking about?
I can't take care of her anymore. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Everything I try, is wrong. I cannot do my job anymore. She knows it, and I know it. She is not my family, and I am not hers. You are right. I need to have a different dream, and I do. I have. Here is my dream.
She takes something out of her apron pocket and hands it to Maisie.
It's a check.
It's a check for my savings. It is a check to you. I want to buy part of your laundromat. I want to go into business with you. Yes?
Oh, Glenn, this is a lot of money.
Oh, wait. It is my life savings. Take it. No, take it. Take it. I want to be a business partner.
Are you sure?
Do you remember what they told us about the fire?
What fire?
Uneasy, she sets the check by her side on the bench and puts a stone on it.
The big one, 1947. They said it started underground. Remember that? There was a fire at the dump and the firemen put it out. They didn't put it out. It kept burning and burning under the ground. It was a secret fire, burning and burning for days, for weeks, and then all of a sudden it just comes up to the top and everything is on fire and nobody can stop it. Macy, there is a fire in Mrs. Farrand. And it's been underground for years and years and years, and nobody could see it. But now it has come up to the top, and it's destroying everything, and then no one can stop it. No one can stop it.
Oh, Clem, I am so sorry. So sorry.
No one could save Reef Point, but not Mrs. Farrand. Not Mrs. Farrand.
Oh, she is not the only one on fire, my friend. Let's go inside before it rains.
She did it, Macy.
She did what?
What you said, what you told me to tell her. Mrs. Farrand went to the town manager.
And?
She didn't want to go, but I told her to. I told her she had to ask for help.
What happened?
I've never seen her so angry. She was furious. I've never seen her like that.
They wouldn't help her?
I can't talk about it. She was humiliated, Macy. She was completely, absolutely humiliated.
There's nothing wrong with asking for help.
She said they talked to her like a child, like a spoiled child, as if she had been getting away with something, as if Reef Point had never been for the public. This dream, this gift, this thing she had been devoting her life to, like it was nothing, like it was just something to get out of the tax money. Macy, they were wrong. We were wrong. It's not about money. It's never been about money. I can see that so clearly now. It's about love. Reef Point is about love. It's the only love that Mrs. Farrand had. The gardening, the landscaping, and she has been sharing it with the people on the island. Now, the government and the town are telling her that it's nothing, that it has no value to them except for the taxes. Because this beautiful thing, this beautiful thing that comes from a woman's soul is nothing. It's just vanity. It's just a yard. Macy, nobody cares enough about Reef Point to save it. Nobody cares enough about it to preserve it after she's gone. I never saw her so hurt. I never saw her so angry.
Well,
That's the one who told her to go.
it would have been a good idea had it worked.
Now you can see, Macy, I cannot stay. The trust is broken. The trust is all broken and Mrs. Farrand is humiliated. So it's time for me to fit the plan to the ground. Because the ground is all burnt up under my feet.
Well, it's there.
And this isn't like you.
She is moving to Garland Farm with Lou and Amy. She'll have them to cook and drive her. She'll have 2 little rooms. She doesn't need anything else. She doesn't need a lady's maid. She doesn't go to California for the winter anymore. She doesn't dress for dinner. She doesn't need a lady's maid. The old dog, Macy. The old dog. No. And it's time for me to make a plan that fits the ground.
Crying hysterically, she picks up the check and waves it in front of Maisie.
I want to own a laundromat.
She tries to stuff it into Maisie's pocket. Maisie has grabbed Clem's wrist in protest when they hear Mrs. Farrand calling.
Clem! Clem! Oh, no, it's hurt. Oh, no, I can't. Don't let her see me.
Go around the bend in the path. I'll find out what she wants.
Don't tell her. Don't tell her.
Clem! Clem! Oh, Maisie. Maisie, have you seen Clementine?
No,
She shoves
No.
the check into her pocket.
I haven't seen her.
Well, I saw she left without her sweater and there's a storm moving in.
Yes, ma'am.
The ocean's very wild tonight, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you mind if I join you?
No, ma'am.
Please, sit.
Yes, ma'am.
You must have heard that we're moving.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know that 40,000 people have visited the garden?
Oh, I'm sure. Probably more if you count the times they came back.
Clem has re-entered and stands behind the bench eavesdropping.
Well, nature is always in transition, isn't it? For every garden, there will be an inevitable forest conclusion.
Well, now, that's true for all of us, isn't it? An inevitable forest conclusion.
Well, when I designed landscapes for colleges, I would consider the beauty of the campus to be part of the curriculum. Beauty teaches us so many things, but the opposite is also true. The deterioration of a landscape unteaches. It's demoralizing, don't you think so?
Oh, I'm sure I wouldn't know, ma'am. I'm not a gardener.
It happens very subtly. A garden, it is destroyed little by little, day by day, by inadvertent maintenance practice, until the fateful moment when the realization dawns that the design has disappeared irrevocably. A garden is often destroyed by the inappropriate performance of the very activities intended to preserve and maintain them.
People can be destroyed like that too.
I'm afraid I don't know about that.
Well, whether you know about it or not, it's still the truth. People, they're like plants. They're living beings too. They don't stay where we put them. They don't stay where we want them to stay. They move, they grow, they change. They feel abandoned.
Ah, they ruin the design.
Exactly. They ruin the design.
Well, in my experience.
Oh,
then
there you are. Mrs. Farrand is looking for you.
Mrs. Farrand turns and Clem steps forward awkwardly.
Oh. Well, there you are, Clem. I was worried about you. You forgot your sweater. I'm going to put some tea on. I hope you'll join me. Ah, there's the rain. It was so pleasant to see you, Murphy. Mrs. McLean was such a lovely neighbor. We'll all miss her so much. Clem.
Baby,
I know. You don't have to say anything.
Maisie hands back the check.
She needs you, Clem.
There is a burst of thunder. Clem ducks her head, crumples the check into her pocket, and exits quickly toward Reef Point. Lightning. Maisie, startled, turns and runs off in the direction of Briar. Blackout. End of scene. Act 2, Scene 3.
I saw it. After she sold it. I would have been 7 by that time. We'd been going to the gardens on Sundays after church, my mother and I. And I remember walking down Main Street, and then we turned onto Hancock and went down to the entrance gate. And the house was gone. There was just this dark hole where it had been, a really large hole, a crater. And the whole ground was muddy and crisscrossed with bulldozer tracks. And where there had been the huge rhododendrons and azaleas, there were just more dark holes. And some of the spruces were gone too. And I said, "Where's Reef Point? Where is it?" And my mother said, "It's here. You're looking at it." And I said, "No, where is it?" And she said, "Here. Mrs. Farrand sold it." And I started crying and I asked her again, "Where is it?" And this time I didn't wait for an answer, but I just began to scream. Because when you were 7, you were beginning to distinguish between reality and fantasy. And later, of course, I understood about real estate and titles and transfers of titles, and how she sold the property to an architect friend, gave it away, actually. I mean, $1,000 an acre. Anyway, within a year, the whole thing had been divided up into 5 building lots and sold. And there was kind of a mad scramble to get some of the larger plants out before the construction began. So that's why it looked the way it did in 1956. But the older I get, the more I find myself thinking about Reef Point. A lot of the things I remember seem to kind of fade, but that one just keeps getting stronger for me. That beautiful heather and those magical paths. At night, I dream I'm walking down them toward the ocean, and sometimes during the day, I'll be doing something, and the memory of the garden just flashes across my mind like the way a lighthouse flashes across the night. I think that I understood something very important when I was 7, something I wish I had fought a little harder to hold on to.
End of scene. Act 2, Scene 4. Lights come up on the bench. It's late September 1954, around noon, and the weather is still summery. There is a sound of hammering. Maisie and Clem are standing with their backs to the audience, looking toward Reef Point. They are both wearing summer dresses. Maisie's dress is extremely flashy, and she carries a large purse. She has a new hairstyle. The women stand together for a moment and then turn around.
So that's that.
So that is that.
It has been a long summer.
Yes. Everything has been moved now. Yesterday was our last night at Reef Point, and tonight we will be at Garland Farm, and every night after that.
A long summer.
We,
A lot of changes. Good changes.
good changes.
Oh, I brought you something.
Oh, wait. Where's Laura? Did she run off?
Oh, don't worry about her. She likes to poke around the beach.
Clem crosses down, Maisie follows.
See? There she is.
Oh.
Hi. Lola!
Lola?
She sees us. Lola? Lola? Drop it! Drop it!
What has she got?
Oh, something did, I'm sure. Lola, you drop that right now. Lola. Good girl. Oh, anyway, I brought you a present. A sweater present.
You didn't need to do that.
Oh, I did. When I moved out to Briarcliff, you brought me the loveliest tea kettle for my new apartment. And I want to give you something for Garland Farm.
Still digging in her purse, she pulls out several personal items. She also pulls out a large bag of coins and sets it on the bench.
Voila! A bag of dumplings. Oh, this is something I've wanted all my life.
Longer than that. Here it is.
She produces a square wrapped package. Clem unwraps it. It's a framed photo.
It's a photograph of Reef Point. And there's you and Mrs. Farrand. And there's me.
Oh, what's the date?
Well, Mrs. McLean took the picture, so it must have been before the fire.
You know, we have a saying in France. Ce que tu perds dans le feu, je dois tout dans les cendres. What you lose in the fire, you will find among the ashes.
And did you?
Oui, bien sûr. I did.
Well, what did you find?
Well, I will tell you. The addition to Garden Farm. It is a wing that was added on. It's what Mrs. Farrand wanted. Look, one side of the wing is Mrs. Farrand's room with her bed and her books, and the other side is my wing, is my room. And in the middle is a little nook for both of us. Now, all 3 rooms face a private little terrace garden.
But I asked you what you found in the ashes.
And I am telling you, Listen. So here is her room, here is my room. And Mrs. Farrand has a set of French doors that open out on one half of the garden. And my room has a set of French doors, just like hers, that open out on the other half. And Macy, do you know what she has done? She has made a garden just for me, for my half. This garden is all the colors that I adore. The red, the orange, and the yellow. Hot colors, as she calls them. She does not like hot colors. Not at all. But that is what she has planted for me. Poppies and irises and zinnias. Bright and so colorful. The garden is always sunny, even in the rain. And then her half of the garden has her colors, the lavender, the blue, the pink, the columbine, the phlox, and the thyme. And in the middle strip that separates our halves, and it is planted with heather and heath and lavender.
How is this?
The rooms, don't you see? They are the same. Well, not exactly, because hers has space for her books, but they are, what is the word? Even, matching.
Symmetrical.
Exactement. And each one has its own garden. Symmetrical. It's like we are sisters.
Oh. Family.
Yes. Yes. Family. I am her friend, her companion at Garland Farm. Macy, there's been a change since we left Reef Point. We were all in service. I was in service to her. She was in service to Reef Point. But all that is gone now. And everything is very simple. This garden is so small. We can keep it so easily, just ourselves. At Garland Farm, we are 4 old people removed from the lives we lived and supporting each other with love and gratitude.
So that is what you found in the ashes. Mrs. Farrand has fit the plan to the ground. And you, my friend, you are the ground.
Blackout, end of scene. Act 2, scene 5.
So that's our play. What happened at Reef Point is happening everywhere now, all over the island, all over the planet. I don't know what could have been done to save Reef Point. But I remember something that Thomas Edison once said. He said, when you have exhausted all possibilities, remember this, you haven't. Good night.
So let's take a 5-minute break and come back, and I really want to hear your thoughts about the play. Answer any questions about the play, but I really also am interested in your feedback about it, your experience of it. So somebody get the ball rolling here. Yes.
From away, you can tell by my accent. And I've been around, I've been to Reef Point, and I walked up and down the trail. I have a real problem in saying exactly where it was along. And it would be very interesting for people like me from away and visitors that maybe on the back of the program, it showed the original and who owned the land and then what it is today.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was a little bit on our slideshow. The land is owned by different owners now. In fact, there was just an auction of one of the pieces of it. I think that's one of the tragedies, that it was broken up so quickly, like it was irrevocably, sold off. What happened a lot with, when people would buy houses that at one time had a Farrand garden on them, suddenly that's gold now. And there's a whole thing of restoring them. Oh my God, can we find the blueprints? Beatrix Farrand once gardened this thing. And had that land remained intact, there might have been a foundation to buy it, like with Garland Farms, and restore it. It was spectacular. You could see from the slides, it was an extraordinary garden because of the way it blended in with Maine natural plants and went right down to the ocean. I mean, it was sort of seamless the way you went from garden to woods. It was just, to me, an extraordinary, she's getting her due now. And I just wish that we all talked about it a lot, and particularly the tearing down of the house, because she had just spent tens of thousands of dollars. She had ripped out all the heating and redone the heating and done all the electricity and actually moved the foundation onto this, right, taking a house like that and then rebuilding the foundation. I mean, extraordinary amount of money. And then it's like, I'm tearing it down. She had remodeled it to be, a public library with the archives and all of that. And I just can't help feeling there was a little bit of a snit going on there. Don't want it, it's fine. I don't know. It just, to me, that there's a lot of mystery about Reef Point. And I think there's just, to me, and I'm autistic, and there's so many things about Beatrix Farrand's life strike me as neurodivergent. The hyper focus. Her life was landscaping, did not do friends, didn't do people, didn't do small talk, sort of lived with her mother until her 40s, and then she married a much older man, and it seemed a companionate marriage, but I'm like, yeah. And the decisions late in life, when all of her close friends and family and advisors were kind of gone, I just feel I could talk endlessly about it because it bothers me. I don't know. I'm gonna shut up now. Feel free to ask the actors, or if any of the actors want to talk about your experience working with this material. I'm so grateful. And I thought the two maids, Katie and Cindy, were extraordinary. I really appreciate the work they put in.
I think your play actually answered the question about the demise of Garland Farm, of Reef Point. And if Beatrix Farrand had remained or kept Reef Point, she would have been tied to it and not free. And by destroying it and moving away, she was able to get on with the next phase of her life. I think it would have been too painful for her to try to keep it up, not be able to afford it, not be able to have the gardeners. And basically it was, it seems to me that your play really answers that whole issue. I actually wish your play had talked a little bit more about the life and personality of Beatrix Farrand.
I didn't want to do that because she's intensely private.
I know.
Everything you can find out about her is the gardens, the gardens, the gardens, the gardens. And then so I decided I would tell the story through the ladies' maids. The ladies' maids were often more intimate than a partner. They were there for everything. They got her out of bed, put her to bed, gave her a bath. They heard all the behind the scenes. They went everywhere. The husband would go somewhere else, but the ladies' maid was like an appendage. And so I wanted to. My plays often give voice to characters who don't have voices. And I feel like just trying to get information about Clementine Walter was extraordinarily hard. And there were some people that I heard of who knew her, but I could never get in touch with them. But she was there all the time. She was there all the time, and it's like they're disappeared because they're only servants. They don't count. But as noted, like, you know, they see everything. They know everything. I think they knew these women better than their partners did. And I loved, Mrs. McLean. That's all real. And she was like 13 and went from being working class Irish immigrant to her father hit gold in Colorado, the Camp Bird mine. And, so they went from working class to, it's like winning the ultra lottery. And obviously
Did she really have the Hope Diamond?
she had the Hope Diamond, and she was young. She was like in her early 20s. Daddy, buy me that. I want it, you know. And she would put it on her dog's collar. I don't know why God gives money to rich people. And so the division between Beatrix Farrand, who came from old New York money, and someone like Mrs. McLean running around with her dog wearing the Hope Diamond, like
I see nothing wrong with that.
you know, it was old money versus new money, and of course her family was just a shit show of suicides and addiction, and you know, I mean, it's kind of like you read the story of people with the lotteries, and sometimes it ruins your life, and it seemed like it may have had that effect on them. Yes.
Carolyn, may I say something?
Yeah.
This is just to answer your question.
Oh, can you give somebody hand her the mic? Yeah, that would be great.
Oh my God, yeah. Alright. So anyways, to answer your question a little more, I did watch that documentary that's mentioned there, and I suggest that you do that. You have watched it already, but there's a statement, a quote there at the bottom, at the beginning of the opening from Beatrix, and I'll read it to you. She says, gardening is a gentle art, and yet it needs imagination, strength, and perhaps more than anything else, the vision that sees the future through the present and bravely works toward that vision. So I think at the end of this, you know, when after the Johnson Act passed, she's trying to figure out how to preserve this. And she's also looking ahead. And her whole speech about, you know, how the demise of a garden, of the design gets lost just a little bit. Because it isn't just having the plant grow well. It's how the plant is pruned, so the shape of the plant in the design all contributes to this beauty of the design. And so I'm thinking that those things, and because she's so strong and so brave and realized it's gonna turn into something else inadvertently, but it just will. And that's not me. And that's it. And that's one of the, I think Carolyn and I've had this discussion about many people who are on the spectrum. There's a little black and white there. And a lot of innocence too.
She
Yeah.
also knew how to maintain a garden. When Dumbarton Oaks was turned over from the Blizzes to Harvard University,
Yeah.
she was very concerned that the intent of the garden would be lost. So she wrote this fabulous book, The Garden Book for Dumbarton Oaks, which identifies each garden space. What are the key elements? What are the things that need to be preserved? And really got it down to the Zen essence of what is the core of each space within the garden, so that it could be maintained by an institution rather than by a garden. So I think she could have easily got these things. That could have been done for Reef Point as well, but she chose to go in that direction.
Yes.
Might be a random question.
Away with the fairies.
Well, thank you. This has been amazing. This time.
Yeah, it is on, yeah.
So I'm curious, on the slideshow, there's a picture of Reef Point. And then you can see just beyond Reef Point in the back, and there's a couple of buildings. Do you happen to know if that's part of all the original Reef Point? Because I grew up in one of those buildings and it was a servant's house. And I was
The
always-
gardener's house.
not the gardeners, and I think she's watching tonight, Marion Smith, she's my friend. Because we were friends, but you can see two houses beyond it, and they were both servant houses, and I'm just wondering, in your research, if you know if Clem lived in a servant house.
I didn't know. I didn't know. I do know it was extraordinary architectural thing that happened at Garland Farms where she's kind of, they're like sisters. Usually the lady's maid didn't have the attic garret like the linen maids would have or something. So I don't know.
Okay.
But certainly nothing like Garland Farms where it was very much like they were equals.
It's that
At
right
the
there.
time-
That's the house I grew up in, right behind Reef Point. The middle one, both of them were servant houses. And Mr. Gray was our neighbor, and he told the story how the fire missed the servant houses as it went down, and it missed Reef Point. So I'll have to do some research, but you know, for many reasons, this is just fascinating. Thank you.
At the time when she tore it down, she had built a garden, a whole building for the Bar Harbor Garden Club. Again, this philanthropy thing, that was torn down. Amy and Lou Garland's house was not torn down. And that's still, you can still see that on the property today, but she tore down her house. And there's an Airbnb there now also that you can spend, I think it's $400 a night, so. Yeah, I thought I'd get maybe the whole cast go in on it. That was a big pajama party there or something. I'm just interested in this, I mean, I'm telling history here, but I'm also trying to write a play about being old and about, if you live long enough, the ground is assuredly going to shift in a major way under you. And it's about every character in this play is scrambling to accommodate the changes in Bar Harbor, but also aging and you know, class stuff, you know, Maisie, the class structure on the island changed radically, and Maisie's jumping in with both feet into being merchant class. But I just would be interested in hearing, other than the history, what else you might have gotten from the play that maybe personally resonated or anything, because I'm writing this, you know, definitely for the island, but I'm hoping it reaches a larger audience, because I really absolutely hate it when you're filling out a form and it's like, are you in your 20s, 30s, 40s, and then 60 and above, and 60 is not 70 and 70 is not 85, and that pisses me off. And this is a play about 70s and 80s, and it's a whole other land, as you know. And so anyway, I'm going to shut up, but I'd love to hear something along those lines. Yes.
I would like to know what the Johnson Act is.
The Johnson Act was the act of Congress that radically changed the laws around a nonprofit.
What year was that about?
It was 54. So the second it happened, she knew she was in trouble. What was extraordinary is that it was able to be a nonprofit, and it was basically her yard. You can't do that now. You know, you would have to donate the land to the foundation. And I suppose a way to save it would have been to donate the land and try to find people that were willing to start a new foundation. But you know, when you're rich, it doesn't go that way. You don't, I feel like that to me, that would be the obvious. And it might have been that she was considering, some people said they thought she considered giving it to the town, but they're going to put a ball field up, you know, I mean, it's like, yeah, it was interesting. That never seemed to even be something she entertained, but that to me was the obvious thing. Yeah. And also I was shocked to when I heard she sold it for $1,000 an acre, which, all right, it's 1956, but still, let's be real. She gave it away to someone who subdivided it and developed it within a year. And I'm not entirely sure. A lot of times older people get fantasies about their nephew or something, and they're not seeing who the nephew is at all. They're seeing this person, I'm going to sign over it's like King Lear. And now I'm old and I'm just going to give it to you and and it's like, no. And she sold it to a developer. And my understanding is she sold it so cheap because she felt he would take care of it, or he immediately did what developers do. It was Bob Patterson. And he'd worked with her for 20 years, but I just don't know that he said, you realize I'm gonna sell this off and subdivide it within a year. And she's like, no, that's fine. And you go and just pay me 6,000 for the whole thing. I don't think that. I think that 6,000 was, I know there's a tax burden attached to this. And you know what I mean? And that's just me guessing.
Carolyn, excuse me,
Yes,
but my wife was afraid she had need to eat, so I wanted to leave, but she wouldn't let me leave because it's so special. But I told you about some of the connections. My dad was a contractor in Bar Harbor, and Bob Patterson was his favorite architect.
oh, he's beloved and she loved him, but I still feel like what happened with that though? Do you know what I mean? She gave it to him, basically.
Well, was she gonna starve to death? Did she have disdain like he was intimated?
No, she had a lot of money. She died with a lot of money.
So there's a certain amount of hubris. Your stuff is so complex, and it takes me to all kinds of places in my childhood and my adulthood. And and now you brought up Bob Patterson. I'm like, what? I mean,
I'm just saying, and also he did the remodel and he probably didn't charge her for that. And that was factored into the giving him of the land. But I don't know, something happened and all of the biographers note she was really angry the whole rest of her life. She was angry. Yeah.
So, I my name's Becky, and I worked for Active Chasse for many years.
Mike.
Okay, right. I just went through this with my daughter's wedding. Believe it or not. But anyway, so I have a lot of insight through his mind about what he thinks is important as a landscape architect. And someone when you were talking about the SNIT, I think it's really painful when a creation that is so much your soul, like in his case, the Rockefeller Gardens, or the Thoya Lodge Gardens, both of which she's been part of the restoration of. And when good, well-meaning people shift the design or put the reds that Clem loved in the place where the colors are supposed to recede to create that very magic that the child in this play was talking about, that is very painful for them. And he has disassociated himself from some of these prominent Maine gardens. I don't mean MAINE, I mean big gardens, because they didn't honor the historical accuracy or the vision. And so I got thinking about how I do think that you achieved that, bringing in that feeling about a dream slipping away and many of those older issues in life. But for example, when I think about Beatrix Farrand, I think about a couple of key things. And one of them is the training. Here she is not able to, she has to compete with men, but she goes off to England and she becomes under Gertrude Jekyll's wing. And that's where she learned that the other thing I think about her, which is that profound, cool strategy with landscape design where hot colors pop towards you and cool colors recede. That's what she did with that kind of principle is what she used with a lot of borders. And I think that because you were talking more about that relationship through the maid's eyes, you didn't go there, but that would have been a temptation for me. Like when Clementine was defending her, like talking about her magic, how she created her magic, she could have slept. I would have been tempted to sneak something like that in, or just to sneak when she's talking about nothing's getting dry. When she's talking about how she couldn't get that education, that she had to go to Gertrude Jekyll. But it's just food for thought. I loved it, and I thought it was great. And I I wonder if you had to really winnow it a lot. There's so
Hugely.
much.
Yeah.
I mean, you really had to err on the side of what the maids, their viewpoint. But it would have been hard to edit some of those types of things from my book.
Yeah, I did have to make, I mean, I knew so much. I researched it hugely, but when I got down to the actual writing of it and the story that I wanted to tell, which is the story about the ground shifting on the island. And all these characters are making big radical moves, including the town manager. The character of the island, the culture of the island is shifting. And they're also aging. We've got, you know, a woman in her 80s, 70s, and 65. And that was really the story. I'm using Reef Point to tell a story that's larger than that. And so, yeah, her theories on gardening, and, you know, I knew so much about that, but it's the stuff of documentary. It's not really, you know, a play, which is, you know, has to live in contemporary time and address contemporary issues. Yeah, and I didn't feel I could take liberties with her. I had this issue with several of the characters that I wanted to write about historically because they were so intensely private. I couldn't take liberties with them, or they left a huge written record. But the maids were like wide open and fair game, I thought, you know. Yeah, and like I say, Debbie Dwyer finding that photograph, isn't that an amazing photograph of Clementine? I this feisty maid that this, and then I saw the photograph of her, and it was like, oh, you know, just very maternal and even everything I'm not, you know. And I thought Cindy did such a beautiful job. And that woman, and she's Catholic, she's buried in the Catholic cemetery. But the sense of there's God's in his heaven, all's right with the world, comfort with hierarchy, and I know my place, and upstairs, downstairs, and suddenly all of it is in flux, and she's the old dog, and that terrible feeling of like, they're not my family. Oh my God, how did I miss that for the last 40 years? And, you know, a woman who's so like that woman in the photograph, what would she look like having a massive panic attack? To me, it's sort of like, oh, well, what time is it? But that, it would be like, yeah, and again, I felt like Cindy did a beautiful job putting across a woman who's losing the whole order of her life is in major flux, and the desperation to buy a laundromat.
But she still had strength. She had strength through the whole thing.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, and again, I just want to celebrate these working class and especially these ladies' maids. That's like the equivalent, the female equivalent of the butler. That's as high as you get. It's way above scullery or linen maid or whatever. And just reading about Mrs. McLean, can you imagine? You're a 22-year-old Irish immigrant ladies' maid, and you're supposed to, you know, you mend their clothes and you lay their clothes out, and suddenly they're coming to get you because Mrs. McLean is hallucinating and she's an opioid, she's a morphine addict, and you have to walk. I would be like, this is so far above my pay grade. But it's like, oh, she's again, let's get Maisie in. I just imagine the horror of, well, let Maisie deal with it, you know, and of course it's the big secret that she's a opium addict. But I just wanted to really celebrate what these ladies' maids had to go through. You know, seeing all the scandals and then dealing with those suicides and, you know, again, way above the pay grade.
Carolyn,
But
I've got a couple more final comments.
yeah, okay.
Yep, there's a comment and there's a question from Kristen. I really resonated with aging and becoming retired, figuring out how my life's work or anyone else's matters to anyone. I'm working to try to preserve a piece of land in Oregon with an 80-year-old owner who wants it to remain accessible and unlogged into perpetuity. It's not easy to figure out how to do that, and I'm sad that Beatrix's garden was broken up and essentially destroyed. Thanks for bringing these questions to us, very timely. May communities benefit from having these discussions? And this is from another last question. Why do you think Beatrix left her archives to California instead of Bar Harbor?
Oh, she was wanting to, it was a dream of having an international center for landscaping. That was the Reef Point dream. When that was not going to happen, she's looking around for where's it going to be? And of course, landscaping was still a very new field. And UC Berkeley, I think, is where she left it, right? And it was, and they were doing the acid-free paper and the temperature control and the humidity, you know, they were doing stuff. It was a very good place. It's sad it left the East Coast, but it was a very good choice. And a chunk of money went with it. And she had a whole bunch of other things. She had the Jekyll collection, all of Jekyll's work. Everything went there. I think that was a good choice. She looked at Smith. She looked around. She took her time with that, but I think they made the most attractive offer, which was about how are you going to treat these materials and how are you going to keep them? She also had a very valuable collection of etching and 16th century, 17th century etchings of gardens, famous gardens. And they immediately put them up on display. I don't know if they still are, but in her lifetime, they really did right by her with that collection. But one of the biographers said if she'd just been able to hang on or get the land held onto till the 70s, at this time the island could give a shit. It was like we don't even have infrastructure. But if she'd made it out of the 50s into the 70s, that's when people were coming around looking to perpetuate the Farrand Gardens. That's when people would have restored Reef Point. That is when, you know, but like I say, it was
having enough money.
She had tons of money. She died with a whole lot, and she took care of her servants. The 3 servants she had got $3,000 a month each for life, which, you know, this is like the 50s and 60s, and they're not having to pay rent. That's a lot. That would be a lot of money today if you don't pay rent. Yeah, it was a lot. And then she also had, the executor had a larger fund that was kept for them in case they had catastrophic illness. She took care of those 3 servants like family. She really showed up for that. And maybe rather than letting Reef Point kind of drain out money for years with gardeners and stuff, she had an eye on that. I want to have the money to be able to really be generous to my staff that have become my family now. So that might have been part of the algorithm. But I was really shocked to see how much money she was leaving $100,000 endowments to various organizations she cared about. Her will is huge, and there was a lot of money, and $1 million in the 50s was more than obviously it is today. So when people act like, oh, it was money and she was selling off jewelry, she was selling off jewelry, but when I saw the will, it was like, I don't know what that was about. The woman was loaded.
Well, you did mention she seemed a little bit spiteful. I mean, you know, there was not that to be discontent.
People said she was very, very difficult to get along with at the end. And that is the thing with aging too. I mean, now we know sometimes. God damn it, laughing at me. But you know, even in the old days, you hear about people changing personality. Sometimes the dad is a whole son of a bitch, and then he suddenly gets senile and he's pleasant. Everybody likes being around him, or it goes the other way. But it seemed like her biographers are trying to be kind, but she was really tough in her old age. People didn't like her. They didn't want to be around her. She was mean. She was angry, and yeah, so I don't know, was that a thing going on with her? Was that, you know, but
I've seen rich people be spiteful too, not just in a dimension, but also rich person spite.
Well, and she kind of broke her own toys. I kind of feel like if she resented what happened to Reef Point, it's like, sweetie, you put the gun in someone else's hand, you know, you sold it.
And the 47 fire had a lot to do with this, which I'm really pleased that you brought it, because it changed the face of things from a summer person town to a tourist.
Yeah.
It was brilliant what you did.
Well, and I love Chris's performance because he's the town manager, and the town manager is also caught in this historical deference to rich people. But he starts out, look, I'm not the bad guy, you know, the Johnson Act, I had nothing, you know, but as he's talking through it, and to me, the turning point is when Chris gets to standing on the effing beach and thinking, in a minute, I'm going to be in an October ocean. Will I die of fire or hypothermia? I don't know. And none of these people are here. None of them. It's October. They're not here. And suddenly like, why am I feeling guilty and apologetic about taxing a woman who hasn't paid taxes in 15 years? Why am I, and you can see him getting into the new culture of the island of like, wait a minute. Who the hell are you people, and so to me, the fire changed that. It was like, they were all traumatized by it. And the summer people are just coming back like, it isn't pretty here anymore. I think I'll just move to Newport again, And so I think that we can see Chris by the end of it, he's not apologizing anymore. That's she's gonna pay a lot of, that's how it works, Yeah. So.
He portrayed it brilliantly.
Yeah.
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 We need to cut it off now, but my email is Carolyn@carolyngage.com. So if you have something scathing you want to tell me, but I can hit delete,
Thank you.